thank you, Sam, for inviting me to share a little bit about time management and how that might be beneficial to this group and to the folks at your church. So it's pretty much going to be, I guess, the next 20 minutes of going over some like strategies that have worked for me and for people that I know and people that I work with that has been really effective at making sure that, you know, you're sort of like on the right track with that, and really what the force is with this whole idea of like time management. Okay, so today's agenda is pretty straightforward. We're just going to look at an overview, an introduction of what time management is, why is it important to you as a primary schooler, as a high schooler, as a college student, as an adult, professional adult, and then we're also going to go through some of the ways you can incorporate some time management strategies into your daily lives and the things that you already or currently do. And then the third bit of today will just be about like concluding and then opening it up for any questions. But in the end, one thing that I really want you to, if there's anything you would take away from this evening, it's that, you know, this isn't going to be like after the next 20 minutes, you're going to be an expert at figuring your life out. I've not figured out my life. I don't think we'll ever fully figure out our lives, but making it easier for us so that we have more time for the things that matter to us is something that is important. And these are like learning how to effectively manage your time is a really good way to do that. Okay. I really like this quote, and I try to implement it as much as possible into my life. It's by Leo Tolstoy, and he's a humanist, really. So he studies like sociology and psychology and philosophy. And he talks about how like the two most important things, and what we say, I guess, weapons, warriors, whatever you think about it, is patience and time. Patience, because obviously, you know, the reason why patience is important to your life. It allows you to really, you know, steep into whatever experience that you're having, and just bide your time for when the outcome really comes. And then because that's really what it is that we're gifted in this world, to be able to do things, to be able to look back, to be able to plan, to be able to spend time with our loved ones, to do things, to get an education, to work. So being able to utilize time is really crucial to pretty much our journey in this life. So as young people in a world that is like always changing, go, 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 it's become increasingly important to manage our time as we become more involved with extracurricular activities, our commitments, church, volunteer work, sports, school, personal life, like paid job. I think someone mentioned that they're working part-time or have plans to get that money in the summer, or to your full-time job, full-time work like me and Sam and Boke as well. So it's impressive, and it's a lot to manage. I'm sure like everybody has at least one or two things that they're doing that is separate from just their daily lives. And for some people, they're able to manage all of this. And then for you looking at them, it might seem like, whoa, they'll have it all together and figure it out. And some may find it more challenging to be able to manage all of the different things they have to do with their lives. But one thing that these two groups sort of have in common is that, you know, they have created some sort of system or some sort of routine that works for them, you know. And so a lot of these strategies or systems that they use are similar to people. They might show up in a different way, but in the end, there's usually a common thread, which we're going to look at in the next few minutes. So in today's session, we're just going to go over some of this. So let's dive in a little bit. But before we do, I know Precious did a quick intro of me. Thank you. So again, my name is Nkiru, and I guess came to Canada about 7 years ago. I went to UBC, currently going to the University of Edinburgh for a master's degree in international development. I also work full-time at UBC as well. I also, about a year ago, started my own business, so I'm an entrepreneur. So there's a lot that's happening, and sometimes my friends are like, how do you do all of these things? But most of the time I'm telling them I'm very intentional about the things that I take on, and always knowing the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. I also, I'm a board member for the Brands for the Better Foundation at Vancouver. And I'm also a mother, a friend, and so all of these things require time, to be able to commit to them. And one thing that I will tell you every day is that I am not perfect. Even in time management, nobody's perfect. But again, like I said earlier, it's just being very intentional about why you're doing the things that you're doing. Ooh, let's try reloading. Okay. So y'all can see the slide, right? Okay, awesome. So, I mean, the idea for today isn't to take all of these strategies and make it also complicated for you. And then you're like, yeah, today I know this, and then tomorrow I'm going to be perfect at time management. But no, like the point of today is to share some of these strategies that you can then take for your everyday life, like I said earlier. And then over time, you may then decide one strategy may work for you, some may not work for you. And then you can also explore other things, because there are like people out there, experts out there that'll tell you, no, do this instead of this, and you get more success, more reward. So it's not necessarily like this, but I've sort of like created an overview really of these things. But yeah, so we're just going to look at the fundamentals, and at the end of the day, remember to give yourself grace. Be kind to yourself if you stumble, and just make sure that you reflect on what happened, where did things go wrong, get back on track as soon as you can. It's a lifelong process, and like I said, I'm still learning to manage my time, and hopefully this will help you over the course of the year in terms of like getting better at your work, the tests that are coming up, even the summer and the plans that you have, and if you're going to be working as well within that. Again, it's about intentionality and whatnot. So let's break it down a little bit in terms of what time management is. But before I go deep, let's say there are 168 hours in a week, really, and the reality is that it's you need careful planning in order to be able to manage your time and to be able to do all the things that you need to do. Sometimes you actually find that the hardest workers are not always the best managers of time. But so it doesn't mean that you shouldn't work, that you should then work less just because you're like, well, they're working harder, but they're not able to actually manage their time. So why do I need to work? But it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So following effective time management strategies, it sort of involves like incorporating those tactics into your daily or weekly or monthly routine that will then optimize those available hours that you have. So when you think about 168 hours, that's the total number of hours you have in a week, 24 hours times 7. And you think it's a lot of hours. Yes, it is. So what really time management helps us to do is to effectively consider how we can get the most value and benefit from these 168 hours. And the best way to set yourself up for success is to intentionally plan. Of course, there are times when you can do things spontaneously, and that is fine. I don't think that time management should be very like rigid in that sense, because then it takes the fun out of doing things, and it then becomes like a burden to you, and you're like, oh gosh, I have to do this because I put it in my calendar. And then that then makes you really like, I guess, resentful of that task. But it needs to really come down to like why, and it's okay, again, like I said, to go with the flow sometimes, but you can't go with the flow like all the time. Because then what happens is that you then run the risk of not using your time effectively, really. So for instance, let's say you have a final exam like that's due next week. And you figured, yes, I can do it. It's just an introductory course. It's an easy subject. I can study for like 2 to 3 days, cram a little, and I'll be good to go. You can do this, you do it, you're fine, you cram, and you pass the class. And then next year comes or next term comes and you have another course. I think someone mentioned another, like a unit that's now a level 2 or level 3. And then you figure, yeah, well, the last year I passed, I did good. So obviously, like if I just continue the way I'm doing, it's going to be fine. For those of you in high school, I will tell you personally that that strategy doesn't work, especially if you plan to go to university where it's sometimes 5 times more like content that you have to learn at an even shorter time period. But anyway, back to high school or primary school. So you do that the first course or the first term and that's fine and you pass and you get, but then the thing that you probably didn't account for because you didn't plan correctly is that the next unit, the slightly harder unit, would require more time in terms of that it's more difficult and there's more to study and more to remember. But you're like, well, last term I was good, so you do the same thing and perhaps you pass, all good, but I can bet good money with you that you're likely not going to do as well as you could have or your previous one, because what has happened is that you've not, with cramming, with like having just 2 to 3 days of learning the first unit, you may have not fully learned and assimilated the thing that you're supposed to assimilate in that first introductory course, so that then that foundation isn't really there or is not as stable, and then you're going into a harder course, and that creates that problem where you pass, but probably not as well as you should have. And so time and managing time effectively helps you to create that value in optimizing and pretty much like getting better benefits for your time. And again, when you think about value, it can encompass a lot of things, like just the happiness. It could be joy that you get from playing, or personal time, or like whatever the outcome is from the activity that you've done. So back to our 168 hours, right? So you break it down. If you want to break it down further, you realize actually that 168 hours is not actually fully 168 hours. When you remove like the recommended 8 hours of sleep. So you have 8 hours of sleep that you're supposed to typically supposed to be having as a young person, as a young adult, a teenager. So that's 56 hours that you're not doing anything. Your body is just resting, right? And then you remove the time that you take from going from, say, your house to work or some other extracurricular activities. So like the physical, like traveling, so transit and whatnot. And then you might have an average of like 10.5 hours a week for that. If you're doing about 1.5 hours a day of transiting. Again, this is average, so it may be more, it may be less. And then you can also consider that, wait, when I get back to back home, there's also like I have to eat, or in the morning you have to eat. Let's say the whole process takes 30 minutes of eating, and you have 3 times, and you have to eat 3 times a day. So that's 1.5 hours gone with just eating. And let's say like you don't even cook the food. So your mom, your dad, whoever cooks food at home. So you just have 30 minutes to eat. Most people actually take longer than that to eat. Even in university, and there's a lot happening, you might swallow, like pretty much inhale your food, but generally 30 minutes. And now if you're cooking, say you're in your first year, second year of university, that's more than 30 minutes, because you have to cook the food and then eat the food. But let's just say it takes 30 minutes per meal, three times a day. So you have another 10.5 hours of eating, right? And then when you then put all like, and these are just 4 examples of things that are almost like fixed, so you can't really get around it. And so you're sort of down to about 80 hours of, how do I say, like productive time that you can actually do other things with. And so then you realize that, well, how am I going to put everything that I have in me, like it to do in those hours? You want to spend time with your friends, you have school, you have work, you have your YouTube channel, you have social media you want to check out, you have church. It's a lot. So you can literally see why it's important. And I mean, you can decide, oh yeah, I'm going to spend 2 hours on social media. And that again just shortens your time to be able to do other things. So that's why we're just going to look at some important strategies that could help you with allocating this 80 hours effectively. So remember that doesn't include your sleep, your travel, eating, getting ready in the morning. Like you don't just wake up in the morning and you're like, okay, I'm going out. You have to shower, hopefully. You have to, do things at home that are just like mundane. So that's where you have that 10.5 hours at the bottom there. So the first strategy is, first of all, before we even go into those, do that, is like understanding that you are in no way or shape, again, perfect. One of the most difficult things for many people to accept is the fact that they're not perfect. Everybody likes to think they're perfect, and that's not possible. We think that because we're taking every precaution, we are planning everything, every scenario. We have my support system in place. I have my family, my friends, like everything is good. There's no chance that anything can go wrong. Unfortunately, anyone with this mindset will run into like serious like reality checks at some point or the other. So before I go ahead, take a moment now before we go further, to realize and know that it's okay to make mistakes and be imperfect with this whole time management thing. The only perfect person is God. So keep this in mind as you strive to improve your time management skills. Understand that even the most thought out plans might change or fail. And these thoughts will open up doors for you to improve when these things come up. Instead of feeling like, oh, I messed up, I didn't get this done in time, I didn't study enough. But also do not use the fact that, oh, I'm not perfect, and I didn't study enough, so I got a B when I thought I was going to get an A, as an excuse to slack off or be lazy or push things to the other side, but then that's when there's a real big problem. So you have to find a good balance of like, I did the things I needed to do, things didn't quite work out, I accept that, I learned from it, and then you move on, versus, I didn't really plan for this, I only studied like 1 hour before my test, so yeah, that's it, so it's really finding that balance that will really help you with that. And so when you do have those moments when like things didn't go quite well, even though you did the things that you were supposed to do, make sure you find someone to check in on. It could be your parents, your friends, someone in your church to check in with, and have moments of just quiet meditation, quiet reflection, and even prayer. And these will really help you to pick yourself up and to, tomorrow you get on with it, And the second bit is to plan, so we're getting a little bit more into now the main strategies that you should be employing, right? So if you can't and don't figure out where those 160 hours or now 80 hours in the week should go, you're pretty much relying on chance to get things done. So planning everything and planning things out for that day or that week ahead, preferably in 30 to 60 minute increments, is important, because number one, it will show you the what. So you know what it is that you have to do, that you will do. And then it shows you when, so okay, so on Monday at 9 a.m. I have like this biology test, right? And then so it shows you like it's a Monday and it's on the time, and it shows you how you're going to do it. So when you're creating your task for, I have an exam that is next Thursday, and then you then put in your calendar leading to that next Thursday that I have to study for this biology exam on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday morning. So it gives you that, so it allows you to pretty much prepare ahead of time. And then it's really good for your mental health as well, because then it allows you to just keep organized, which limits stress and anxiety and forgetfulness, because you don't have to think about cramming. Like, I'm not going to come here and tell you that, oh, I've never crammed before. I have crammed. Everybody has crammed, because I mean, it is what it is. You have to do what you have to do sometimes. But it's not sustainable. It's like at some point, there's only so much that you can cram before. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but there was a time that I crammed and I'm at the exam. I can't remember what it is. Like, it happens because your brain is just like, what, you know? So it's not the most effective. Yeah, sometimes it works and it's good and like it's a quick way, especially when you have to deal with like formulas and whatnot. But it's not, in the end, it's not the best strategy that you can apply. For one, I write things down a lot, knowing that there's always something. I'm always thinking, I'm processing things, and I need to. So if I need to get something done sometime in the coming days, I will immediately open my calendar on my phone, look at what I have around that time already, and then make a new entry. So, for instance, when Samuel reached out to me about giving this talk, like the first thing I did was open my calendar and see if because my weekends these days are becoming busy. So I opened my calendar and looked and I was like, yo, I'm free at that time. So all good. And then I just entered it as a hold in my calendar before I even confirmed with him, because, things might change. But I wanted to make sure that, okay, that part I have it, and nothing else that's coming up is going to mess with that time block that I've created, right? So it really helped me to keep organized and make sure that I'm keeping my word when I say I'm going to do something. So that's what really planning really does, and that's like a good way that you can incorporate. Like, everybody has most people have phones, and so it's like a matter of like, I have a biology test, start trying to remember and put everything. There's only so much like you can put in your brain. Yeah, eventually your brain might recall it, but use the tools that are already there, like in your hands, like literally your phone, or your or a piece of paper, and just write things down and start that planning process. Okay, so the third strategy is to prioritize. So how do you effectively plan and prioritize what you do? So consider like the 6 W's and why. So even though plans change, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't make plans at all. There are many, many ways that you can do this to be successful. So take some time to determine what works best for you. Many people find it that it is really helpful to take a few minutes every evening, either before bed, or even sometimes in the morning, depending again on the type of person you are, to put together sort of like the agenda for the day or for the week or for the month. So again, the first bit is decide the 6 W's. So the who, the what, when, where, what, the why, and then the how, right? Of any responsibilities that you have coming up in the coming months. So again, I'm just going to keep using the example of the exam that's coming through. So who is it? It's you. You have an exam. What is it? It's a biology exam. When is it? Next Thursday. Where is it? You can either be specific as like is this classroom, and then what, why. Obviously you have to do it, if not you don't pass, and then you then look at the how. So the how is more about like the task you're going to do. So you're going to be like, okay, I need to study. You think you need to study X amount of hours in order to be prepared for that test. So planning for the coming weeks and the coming activities really allows you to distribute your workload in a way that would then avoid stress for you, and then it really allows you to sort of build that routine and remain quite productive as your days go by. And then next bit is to make a list. So make a long list of your typical day. You sit down, you're like, yeah, I wake up at about 7, 8 a.m. You do this. This is what happens. I go to school from X time to X time. And then I have maybe basketball practice, or like you meet up with friends, whatever that looks like. I come home, I help mom with cooking, so just pretty much make a long list of your typical day. And then that helps you. So you be like, okay, I have homework that I need to submit next week. So then you go in and start breaking those lists into that list into like smaller activities of, okay, so under the fact that I have basketball practice at 5 p.m., it means that I need to make sure that I take my my workout clothes, my shoes. I have my test next week. It means that, okay, I need to start studying tomorrow in order to be prepared. So just having that vision of what your day or week looks like would then allow you to start breaking down things a little bit more, and then leave space for just things that may happen, and also to just breathe. Because again, when you then have a full calendar where it's like, I block this off for this, I block this off for that, I block this, it can then become overwhelming, because then also you think like, oh, I have to do everything now, or and so you also don't want that situation happening to you as well. Okay. Right. Then the fourth bit is this didn't load properly, but it's fine. Understanding whether you're a night owl or an early bird. So, or do you fall somewhere in the middle between being a night owl or an early bird? Because then oftentimes these types of questions can help you, like your time management skills, as you determine sort of like the best time, like the best productive time during the day. So for example, a morning person who's able to jump out of bed straight away, wide-eyed, sorry, there's a mock-up here. Yeah, so sorry. So a morning person, they're wide awake, they just hit the road running, and then they can accomplish a lot of their work like in the early parts of the day. So maybe they start at 6 a.m. By 12 noon, they pretty much like done everything. Whereas a night owl might be moving a bit more slowly. When they wake up and need some time to get their usual work done. So these people will usually achieve a lot of like a higher productivity sometime in the afternoon. So myself, I'm a night owl. Like my productive times, sometimes like before I used to be embarrassed to say this, but then I'm owning it. That's just who I am. But my productive times start at 10:30 a.m. Like if you message me or you want me to attend a meeting or you want me to read something before 10:30, I will do it, but you're probably not going to get the high quality work or response that you want at that time, versus if you had maybe waited an hour or two to contact me or to ask me for that thing. So knowing the kind of person you are will really help. So that's one thing that I have known and I incorporate in my work. So I never book any meetings before 10 a.m. because I'm like, okay, I need to be present and like to give my best during this important meeting. So I'm not going to schedule in the morning. I rather do things in the morning, like if I have to go to work, right? So when I start at 9 a.m., the things that you see me doing are like things like tidying up my email, checking my emails, tidying up files and folders. So things that I don't need a lot of brain power for. And then at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, I can start like the more like heavy lifting things that I need to do. So whichever side you're at, decide when you're the most awake, like the most alert, most motivated. And that will be the time that you need to do a lot of your work and accomplish a lot of your daily tasks. So when I was in my undergrad, I maybe only did an all-nighter twice in the 4 years that I was in undergrad. So I don't know if everybody knows what an all-nighter is, but it's pretty much you're studying through the night. And so you would sleep at maybe 6 a.m., 7 a.m. because you have a lot of things to do. But I tried it and I was like, I just want to sleep, So knowing that, yeah, I typically go to bed at 1 a.m., but I can't do anything past 1 a.m. all the way to like do that. No, I would rather like wake up at 10 a.m. and study during the day, throughout the day, than like study at night. So these things, knowing the kind of person you are and then plan around it as much as possible will help you a lot. Okay. And number 5, stick with what works for you. So you figured out your tasks, your plans, your priorities. You've determined that you're a night owl, So what else? How do you then stick with those plans and get things checked off? right? So there are lots of time management and task management apps out there that you can download on your phone. They're great. I get like, somehow I find myself with planners in my house, like those books that have like the dates and whatnot. However, like, just because you have those things at your disposal or you have those gazillion books, doesn't mean that you're going to automatically know how to be productive and to spend your time well. An app might work for you, and sometimes it might just mean entering your like information in like the calendar that already comes in your phone. It could also just mean taking notes, and it can just be good old fashioned like writing it down on a piece of paper. But it's important for you to put something down or type something down, because what happens is then your brain is communicating to your brain that there's something of priority that needs to get done. And so it'll be less versatile. So it'll be less of an issue of you trying to remember or plan these things when they're already on paper or in your app. Okay. So I'm just going to breeze through the rest of this. The next strategy is just thinking about like the big projects and understanding that they're really small like they're pretty much small projects that make up the big picture. So create milestones. So you have a dance recital that is due, that is in on August 1st, right? You need to start now really to start practicing that. So you can make a milestone. It's like by June 1st, I should be able to have already learned the routine from A to Z. And then by July 1st, you're like, okay, I should be able to know the routine and be able to do it without any errors whatsoever. So those are what like milestones are. And some of the questions you need to ask when creating those milestones are like, what does my team or the people around me, my boss, my academic goals, what do they need from me at this time? What can cause the most issues if I don't get things done? What can I do today to make my life easier and better? And then 7, you go to like, take smart breaks. Like you really do need to take breaks when you're studying. Like I'm not a big supporter of people studying 5 hours straight. No, your brain cannot take that, right? So take breaks during like your homework, study, or extracurricular activities, because then it allows you to decompress and it makes going back to that task easier than like, oh, well, I have to keep studying again and again and again. The next bit is minimizing interruptions and distractions. These are not loading properly, but it's okay. They're supposed to be images, but so the more uninterrupted time you have, the more success it is. And the big distractor for us, obviously, like social media, smartphones, like the internet, and even some meetings. I've been in meetings where I was like, you could have just sent an email or a text message. You didn't have to call everybody in for a 1 hour meeting, right? But obviously, those are some things that can distract you from that. So some strategy that you can use here is to like avoid checking your emails or checking your phone while you're in the middle of something, right? So maybe create specific times in your calendar that you enter in your planner, where it's like, okay, I'm going to respond to all the text messages that I get, or I'm going to respond to all the calls that I have missed. Because once you break your flow, it would take some time for you to get back into it. So you're not going to be like, answer that call. Okay, yeah, right. I'm now like reviewing Hamlet now from where I stopped. No. So, and then put your phone on silent. I know it's easier said than done, but having your phone right in front of you is just a recipe for distraction, really. If possible, even put it in another room, because then that helps as well. And then when you're working with other people, like you're in a team, I don't know, I'm sure you've all been in some sort of team, or you will be in some team project. There are some people that are just there to distract your life. And so it's okay for you to politely say like, yo, we're trying to get this done. Let's like meet up, give them a time that you can be able to chat outside of what it is that you're currently doing. And that's totally fine with you and that. Okay. And piggybacking off of that is just like procrastination. Like, remember why you started what you were doing. Why are you trying to make sure that you're doing all of the tasks in order to be successful at that dance recital that you're having? Why are you taking all of these like advanced placement courses in like grade 12? Well, perhaps it's like you want to get into UBC or another university. So whenever it's like you're feeling like, oh, I don't want to do this, try to remember exactly why it is that you started. Remember your goal. Remember that milestone that you're having. And you can, again, like I said, ask for help. Get that accountability body out. Like, okay, so I've been watching. I said I was going to only watch like one episode on like Netflix, but now it's like 5. I've been binge watching it for 5 hours. I need help. So get someone who's going to be like, girl, stop that. Go face your books or something, you know, and that's fine. That's not a failure. That's actually strength for you to realize that, okay, you need someone that will check you when you're going down a different path. And people always say that, oh, multitasking, you should be a multitasker. It's awesome. No, actually, like multitasking is actually very counterproductive for you. The amount of time you use multitasking, imagine you getting 11% in your exam or 11% results in like an extracurricular activity. Because what is happening with your brain is that it's not giving its full attention. It's 100% to that activity. So it's decreased because it's trying to do multiple things at the same time. So if you find yourself doing, like you're studying, but then you're doing biology on the side, but somehow someone is messaging you about like a math problem. It's like to create a time block where it's like, okay, I'm going to only do biology today. Tomorrow I'll come and deal with English or something, you know? And then again, just stop and sit for a few minutes and just breathe, you know, and then get back into that one activity that you're doing. When you put all the time blocks, you find that you actually have a really, really good, solid plan, and you can get both things done, but just not at the same time.
Nkiru, so we have 5 minutes each for the question, so probably should begin.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, so this is my second to last slide, so I'll be done. So the last bit is really review your day or your week. Spend some time to just think about how things went, what things you need to accomplish, what went wrong. And again, I reiterate, give yourself grace, pat yourself on the back when you achieve something. You know, that feeling when you have the little box and you check it is amazing. I like it. So if you write things down, just check it off and just trust me, it feels so good. And if you think like your efforts fell short, just decide on what you want to do differently tomorrow, next week, and then walk towards it. You know, at the end of the day, just be in good high spirits, and then pick up tomorrow. Yeah, so at the end of it all, breathe. I think this is the most important thing for the whole idea of time management. You should always set some time to just kick back and relax. You know, take a break from everything. Block off time where it's like fun time, where you can do anything you want to do, Netflix, you know, whatever that looks like to you. Spend time with family, go out, eat food, go to the beach. You know, allow yourself that time to really recharge mentally, physically, emotionally. You really do need it. And the final bit is like, what next? What, like I've given you 12 different ways in which you can incorporate this. It's like the thought of, I don't know about you, but the thought of like changing or working on 12 things about myself right away is a lot and probably impossible. But if you simply just choose 3 of the strategies that I've like provided this past like 25 minutes, and then integrate it into already what you're doing. Do you think it will make any difference? Try it out for the next, like that's a challenge. You can discuss at your next meeting next week, and try and see if it made any difference in your life. And then maybe perhaps 1 week isn't enough to fully see if there's any change. It might be, you know, over the summer. Just take those just 3 things and then implement it and say, you know, let's see. And also say no a few times this week, you know, review your priorities, remove some of those like distractions, that really do not help you with being productive. And you really will be surprised at like the difference that it will make for you. You're never too young, you're never too old, you're never too in the middle to get started. It's a lifelong thing. So the sooner you get started, the better it will be for you in terms of being able to do more with your time. So yeah, I'm open to questions. I know I ran a bit behind time, but yeah.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Oh, Precious, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, Nkiru. That was a very, very good presentation, and I'm sure everybody learned one or two things from it. If you have any questions, now is the time to ask. If you have any questions, please unmute your mic and ask your question. Thank you.
It's so dark in here. I can't even see my face.
Does anyone have questions?
Nope.
Anybody? Or do you guys want to share one or two things that you learned, a take home?
Yeah, I could start.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nkiru, for the presentation. Some of the things already mentioned, I already tried to incorporate that, like keying stuffs into my Google Calendar and stuffs just to block off things. I think one of the things I don't tend to do more is to probably take breaks within tasks. I know the last presentation during the seminar we had healthy lifestyle, and I said like when I sit at my table, probably I only go when it's time for breakfast, lunch, and I just sit at that same table. Um, and I'm kind of guessing that's my own way of doing things instead of having breaks. But I know like 4K do have breaks between our own kind of work hours. So like, do you think there are people who are like that? Like they just prefer to just do stuff like 5 hours straight and then take a big rest afterwards?
Yeah, I mean there are people that do that. And like I said at the beginning, like at the end of the day, like I guess you will do what's best for you. However, like I can't overemphasize the importance of taking breaks because it really does give your brain that time to like literally expand to then be like, "Whew, I'm breathing." Then when you come back in, you're able to then even take in more things, more information from like your study or from your work. So it is possible to go on straight. Is it the most effective, the healthiest? No, it's not. But yeah, there are people that are able to do. And also I think it also comes down to just the way the world people consider people that do things, as like you have to be going, 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 going. Because if you stop, then you're kind of like lazy and like why like you're getting up like every for 15 minutes every hour. Wait, why are you doing that? Like, don't you have work to do? So remembering that just because you're taking a break doesn't mean that you're lazy. Is also something that you need to retrain yourself.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you so much. I think for me, one thing I'm taking away from this presentation is being intentional. You have to be intentional about everything you're doing. You have to be intentional when you're prioritizing your task and when you're planning. So I think that's something that I'm taking away from this presentation.
Hello, I have a question.
Okay.
How do you
Ask.
limit distractions?
How do you prevent distractions? Sorry, who asked that question? Thank you. I'm sorry that my things didn't load properly. I think something went wrong somewhere. Um, so like one of the ways that I mentioned earlier is to literally put your phone away. Like it's so hard, I know, but you're again, first of all, remember exactly why you're doing what you're doing. I need to study because I cannot fail my biology class, right? So that is the reason why you're studying. It could be more important as like I love biology, like I want to embrace it and know more. Whatever the reason is, that's your reason, right? First know that, and then you're like, what are the things around me that I know would distract me from this time that I need to spend studying, and that's typically like your phone as young adults, even as me, I like me. So putting, if nothing else, even if you're not going to put it away like in another room or in a drawer, put it on silent when you need to work. And then in those, like I mentioned, like you can, for every 1 hour, you should have about 5 to 10 minutes break. You can be like, okay, I'm going to study for 2 hours. So I'm going to take pretty much like, let's say I'm going to take the whole 10 minutes break. So you have 20 minutes to go back to your phone and play with it. That's fine. But the remaining times are going to be spent like focused on school. So don't like try to be hard on yourself and be like, even though I'm going to take a break, like I'm not even going to touch my phone, because you might be able to do that for a few days, but then afterwards you're like, nah. And then before you know, you're spending 40 minutes on the phone and 20 minutes studying. So that's a good way to do that. Another way is that you can block out like times for you to check your emails. So because of my business, I always have my notification on my phone for like Instagram and Facebook. But as of like a couple months ago, I realized that it was quite distracting. Yes, I want to be able to have like a target to always respond to people that email me or send me messages within like 2 hours. But I realized it's not sustainable. Already I have on my website that I'll reply you within 48 hours. So why am I then creating this huge task that is then take this use? Oh, I have to do it in two hours, and then it's distracting me from my other work. So what I did is I turned off the notifications, and then at lunchtime, so in the first 10 minutes of my lunchtime, I use that to check all of like the emails or the whatever notifications that come through, because I know that now it won't break that flow that I have with the other things that I have to do. And the last bit is checking in with people, and being accountable. Maybe you have a part-time job, you're working with the team on a project or in a class. You just like tell people, like I said earlier, like even tell your mom and your dad, like, explain to them the reason why. Okay, so you told me that I have to do laundry at like Thursday at 6 p.m. However, here's my calendar and how I'm trying to manage the time correctly. Mom, Dad, is there a way in which I can do laundry on Saturday morning or whenever, so that I'm not breaking the flow of my time? So obviously you're going to do what your parents want you to do, right? But now you're telling them again the reason why, like, and showing them the reason why, like this makes my work and my schoolwork, whatever, bit more efficient, and like doing laundry in the middle of the day is going to break that flow for me, right? So being able to tell people and show people why that like they're doing this is going to pretty much ruin your plans. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Does anybody else have any last minute questions? Any last minute questions? Okay, I guess not. All right, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. Can we all like clap for our presenter, our speaker? Thank you so much. That was very, very informative. We really appreciate every bit of it. And yes, at this moment, we're going to close